The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. It is Canada Day. Canada is now 141 years young. By the way, here's some facts about Canada. Canada is the second largest country in the world with 9,971,000 square kilometers of land. The baseball glove was invented in Canada in 1883. With only 3 people per square kilometer, Canada has the 4th lowest population density in the world. Vancouver, Canada is tied with Zurich, Switzerland for the highest quality of life of any city in the world. The world's smallest jail is believed to be in Rodney, Ontario, Canada. It is only 24.3 square meters, or about 270 square feet. Canada has the 9th biggest economy of the world. According to the United Nations Human Development Index, Canada has the highest quality of life in the world. Contrary to public opinion, Canada does not own the North Pole. In fact, the North Pole is not owned by any country. It is believed, however, that Santa Claus is from Canada. Canada is the world's 8th biggest trader. Of all the world's producers of natural gas, copper, zinc, nickel, aluminum, and gold, Canada is in the top 5. Canada is the home of many great inventions, including basketball, the electric light bulb, the electric range, the electron microscope, standard time, the television, the telephone, and the zipper. Canada is the 5th largest energy producer in the world, and Canada has the world's highest education enrollment. So there you go. Happy birthday, Canada, and thank you, Canada. My special guest this hour is L.A. Marzulli. He's the author of the best-selling Nephilim Trilogy. He has received an honorary doctorate from Pacific International University for his work. He possesses an in-depth knowledge of UFOs and other supernatural phenomenon. L.A. believes that his new book, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, The Coming Great Deception and Luciferian Endgame, may provide vital information regarding the ongoing tensions in the Middle East, ancient prophecies, and ongoing supernatural events. His new book may be purchased in all stores, or you can go to his website at www.spiraloflife.com. And L.A. Marzulli, welcome back to the X Zone. How are you, L.A.?
I'm great, Rob. Thanks for having me back. Pleasure to be here, as always.
It's always great having you with us, L.A. Let me see. Where do we start tonight?
Well, interestingly enough, last week we were talking about the weather anomalies, and I read a post that I received, and we kind of talked about it at length, talking specifically about the weather-related incidents, natural disasters specifically, are up 400% in 2 decades. And you and I talked about this, and it's like if it was maybe 50% or even 100%, I mean, maybe we could say, well, it's cyclical, or we're not sure, global warming, but 400% in 2 decades. And then, of course, right on the heels of that last week, now we've got lightning. I'm reading this from a post off the Internet, but it's all over everything, and I think most people are aware of it. Lightning sparks 800-plus fires in California. And I had the privilege of speaking to a fire captain today for about a half an hour on the phone, kind of picked his brain. Here's just some of the highlights from the interview.
All right, L.A., what I'd like to do is hold that because I do have to go to a news break. L.A. Marzulli is our special guest. And no, it's not a news break. I'm ahead of myself tonight. It's our first commercial break. We'll be back in 2 minutes with our special guest, L.A. Marzulli. His website, Exonation, www.spiraloflife.com. If you'd like to give us a call and speak to L.A., our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. That's toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. My producer tonight, the one and only Batman. Nice working with you again, Batman. Batman, L.A. Marzulli, and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue live and around the world from our home in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, right here on the Talkstar Radio Network.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits, and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Another great Canadian artist, Michel Pagliaro. That's one of his better songs called Loving You Ain't Easy here on the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network. And this portion of the X-Zone is being brought to you by Amira Soul Mystic, Master Clairvoyant Healer and Spiritual Teacher. For more information on Amira Soul Mystic, she has a toll-free number, X-Zone at 1-800-659-6796. That's 1-800-659-6796. You can call that number and ask her about the sacred travel trip to Egypt that she is planning for this November. Or you can go online to purchase her book, Love Up Your Life, at www.soulmystic.com. L.A. Marzulli's with us, and L.A. sorry about that, buddy. I had to take that commercial spot. And we were talking about lightning, and you were talking to a fire chief.
I was, and you know, it's sort of amazing. But this is one of the quotes from the story, not the interview. I'll get to that in just a second. This is a quote. The lead line is, lightning sparks 800-plus fires in California. And reading down the page, this is an unprecedented lightning storm in California that it lasted as long as it did. 5,000 to 6,000 lightning strikes, Walter said. We are finding fires all the time. So, and I looked at that and I said, well, what kind of, is this really an anomaly? And so I called the fire chief, spoke to him for about a half an hour. And, at first he's going, well, California, especially Northern California, Schwarzenegger himself declared that we are in a state of drought in California. So some of those things do add up. The fact that the snowpack wasn't as much as it should have been. The rainfall certainly is below average. There's also a high-pressure system, which is really drying the fuel in the mountains even further. What's weird, I'll just cut to the chase without, because I kind of, it was a half an hour of question and answering. One of the things I asked him was, do you find this somewhat bizarre? And he says, and the fire captain said, no, not when I consider all the factors, but it's early in the season. Then I asked him, is there a record book that keeps track of a number of fires? He says, I'm sure there might be one, but the fact that we are in a level 4 at this time is definitely out of the ordinary. So it's a guy that deals with this stuff, and he's never seen anything quite like it this early in the year, this time of the year. And I just found it just, from my viewpoint, specifically talking last week with you and sharing all your listeners, the fact that natural disasters are up 400%, and this is certainly a natural disaster. And I was on Drudge Report right before the show to kind of check it and see how the fires are coming, and they're still not even close to containment. And apparently, the number, according to latest statistics, this came on the 24th, and today the number is up to like 1,200 apparently. So it's really reaching, I hate to use the word, but biblical proportions as far as a disaster. It's just really nasty. And Rob, we were talking about this stuff and kind of wondering, are we really in that season of time that ancient prophecies, talk about, the idea of famines and earthquakes in various places, this kind of weird weather anomaly? Is this just something for the record books, or are we seeing more and more of these things? Is there, in fact, an acceleration, which is what I've coined it? Are we, in fact, seeing an acceleration of these events, and not only weather-related events, but other events such as, which is the next story I'd love to get into, the idea that this war in the Middle East seems to be heating up, and the vitriol between Israel and its surrounding neighbors isn't going away. And I think last time I was on the show, we briefly talked about some of that and discussed some of those ancient prophecies that talk about this coming war. And it sure looks like this is what's going to happen.
Is there any correlation between the fires and the lightning strikes and the scientific community? What's science saying about the lightning strikes? How is science, explaining what is going on?
Good question. And what I'm going to do for the next show next week, I'm going to try to hunt down a meteorologist in the Los Angeles area and try to get an interview with that person and ask that question.
Because everybody looks to the scientific community and everyone neglects the ancient prophecies these days. Mm-hmm. And, the famine and all the other natural disasters that are talked about within the biblical prophecies, could they be interpreted as global warming?
Interesting. I mean, there's a few people that have contacted me in regard to global warming, and apparently, you hear from Al Gore in that particular camp that there's about 2,300 scientists which have signed up saying that we are in global warming. This person is like on a vendetta with this thing, and he's gotten 30,000 scientists and doctors and just people from the scientific community who come out and say that the science is flawed and this is cyclical. We're not in global warming. So as typical, even in a jury case where they'll bring experts in and one person will say it's this and the other expert will say exactly the opposite. So it's hard for us to discern, scientifically anyway, because you have such a vast difference between the opposing camps. Are we in really global warming? Is it cyclical? Have we seen this before? Are the weather anomalies that we're seeing, is this just a cyclical deal? Or, in fact, is it mirroring and echoing some of what these ancient prophecies are saying? Is it a little bit of both? And that's why I just kind of watch, and I really don't, try not to pass judgment on it, try not to be too much of an alarmist or a whistleblower, but I do try to bring it to the attention of listeners on the X Zone, because I think people need to know. I mean, like the huge flood that's happening in the central part of the United States, that's not going away. And now combined with the fires, and when you look at other global events, just because our news media isn't talking about the China earthquake or the cyclone in Myanmar, people are still definitely feeling the effects of those natural disasters. And there's apparently a storm brewing now it's up to, I think, an F2 or moving into an F3, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing more about that. But what people need to remember is that, yes, the cyclone is gone, but Miramar now is not in everybody's sights. The media has moved on to something else, whether it's Paris Hilton or whoever they're talking about this week. The bottom line is that country is really devastated, and the relief organizations such as World Vision are definitely taxed. And the more of these things that happen, relief organizations just can't fill the bill anymore, and things really start to slide. So all that to say, are we in this time that ancient prophecies talk about? And that's up for your listeners to decide. I personally, myself, I believe that it seems to be that we're in acceleration, the beginning of the birth pangs, as these prophecies talk about. That's my own personal view.
You know, there isn't a lot of negativity when it comes to the global warming, the floods, the disasters that are happening. But one thing that I have noticed, it's bringing the world closer together. It's bringing the humans in the world closer together. It's like an awareness. It's like a slap on the back of the head, like your mother used to give you to get your attention.
Well, you know, when 9/11 happened, I remember I was in my car and I was stopped at a light, and a neighbor pulled up next to me. I had my radio off. A neighbor pulled up next to me, rolled down his window, and said, "Turn on the radio. You got to listen to this." And I flipped on it. I kind of looked at him and said, "What's going on?" He said, "Just turn on the radio." And of course, I turned it on, and on every station, I mean, It was just everything was interrupted. The first plane had already hit, and the second plane was minutes away, and I heard that live. And the aftermath of that brought about. I mean, people. My phone rang off the hook. What's going on? Is this a sign? You know, I mean, a lot of paranoia, a lot of concern. And what it did do is it kind of awakened the people in this country, at least a little bit, kind of stirred us out of our slumber, just a little bit. And then, of course, we fell back, in my opinion, we fell back into sleep and hit the snooze button, and off again we went. Meanwhile, and this is something that most Americans don't know, I think we've touched on this before, but I read a post today that now they're declaring Afghanistan is more dangerous than Iraq. So it's like it goes back and forth between the two. And, of course, we also know that in 2007 was the bumper crop of opium in Afghanistan, and we all know where, follow the money deal with that. Mm-hmm. Someone's really profiting off of the 93% of the world's opium harvest is grown in Afghanistan. So that's it's not. I don't have a good feeling about that.
Neither do I. In any situation, all you have to do is follow the money, and you'll get to the bottom of it.
And what amazes me is obviously somebody or a group of people, I have no idea. I'm just one guy here. I've never been to Afghanistan. But when I read something like that, and then they say, the United Nations is going to crack down and, we're going to have to figure out what's going on. It's just, in my opinion, it's just a bunch of nonsense. I mean, we're over there. We obviously have some sort of satellite reconnaissance that's positioned over Afghanistan. So it's in geosynchronistic orbit with Afghanistan. It's over Afghanistan the whole time. They know exactly what's going on, and yet the poppies are allowed to be harvested. 93% of the world's opium comes from Afghanistan, and it begs the question: who is profiting from this illicit trade, which is destroying hundreds of thousands of people's lives worldwide? I mean, it's unbelievable. But then you go back into the history, and I hate to say this, but the history of our country in the United States. And you get the slave trade one, and you get the opium trade two. I mean, it's common knowledge that England, Great Britain, went to war with China over the opium trade.
Mm-hmm.
That war was fought. Hong Kong was established as a peace treaty. The British had a port now and ran opium. I mean, it's. I'm not making this stuff up. It's common knowledge that the opium wars were fought for the opium trade. So none of this has gone away. Someone is profiting and making, perhaps billions of dollars off the misery of others, and of course it's morally and ethically wrong.
Let's look at this hypothesis, my friend. Then we have to go to our commercial break. They were able to find Saddam Hussein.
There you go.
They haven't found Osama bin Laden because once he has been caught, they can't justify the cause of staying in Afghanistan.
And I concur. It's, in my opinion, he's being used as a boogeyman. I mean, they could have gotten this guy. I have no faith in the fact that we haven't gotten him. It's been 7 years and we haven't gotten the guy yet. I have a real hard time with that. I really do. And you're right. All they have to do is play the latest Bin Laden tape and stir up the fear and get everybody going crazy. We're in Afghanistan. Our blood and treasure's been over there, and it's turning out just like Vietnam, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's a no-win situation, and the Afghans have a bumper crop of opium, and now it's more dangerous than Iraq, according to
L.A., stand by. I've got to take my news break at the bottom of the hour. L.A. Marzulli is our special guest. Visit his website, www.spiraloflife.com. We'll be back on the other side of the news. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. The X-Zone uses Flight Explorer Professional for flight information, weather, and much more. As a matter of fact, as of this minute, we are monitoring 1,851 flights over Canada and the United States, and on their way to Canada and the United States from Europe and Asia. Once again, I'd like to thank the people at Flight Explorer Professional for submitting us to their service. 1-877-528-8255 is toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. My name is Rob McConnell, and L.A. Marzulli is our special guest this hour. He is the author of the best-selling Nephilim Trilogy, and his website is www.spiraloflife.com, and that is where you go and get his new book, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, The Coming Great Deception and the Luciferian Endgame. L.A., always great being with you, and I'm sorry that we had to cut us off for the news break.
Rob, it's always great to be here. I'd like to just tell your X-Zone family listeners that my blog is now up and running, finally, and it's lamarzulli.wordpress.com, and I'm blogging every day, and you can get the latest rants at lamarzulli.wordpress.com. There's something that just blew me away this morning. It came off a Debka file. We were talking about this whole idea of the coming war, and it is coming. I mean, unless something happens, and I hope it does happen. I mean, I don't want to see this thing happen, but it seems like they're ramping up, and it's almost past the point of no return. This is from a Debka file, and the lead story says Iran sets up 31 martial districts and prepares 320,000 graves for war dead. As far as I know, this is unprecedented. I have never heard of any civilization anywhere preparing in advance for the digging graves for the enemy, and that's what they're doing. They're saying basically that we're digging 320,000 graves, so when the invading U.S. or Israelis come into our country and we kill them, we'll be able to bury them quickly.
Yeah, but how much of that is just psychological warfare?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I wish I had boots on the ground or somebody over there I could email and find out whether they're really doing it or is this just propaganda. It's just more saber rattling from Iran which I'm sure it is. I mean, they've been going back and forth. Israel, of course, several weeks ago ran authority up to Greece in a mock attack of the Iranian nuclear facility, and it was about the same distance, about 900 miles apart, and they ran like 100 F-16s and F-15s up there, plus helicopters and refueling operations. I mean, the whole thing. It was quite an exercise. So the Iranians know something's up. The Israelis have about a year before the Iranians get the bomb.
Yeah.
But there's also other sites are saying that the Shahab missile can be rigged, apparently, to take a Russian nuke even now. So in other words, the Ruskies can come down, give them the nukes that they want, retrofit them onto the Shahab missiles, and the Shahab missiles apparently will reach Tel Aviv. So that's in certain parts of the net too. So it's just a question of, when this thing is really going to, when someone's going to pull the trigger on this thing and it's actually going to start. I hope it's later rather than sooner, and frankly, I hope that it's averted. But like we were talking about last time, is there a way to stop it? Is the prophecy so etched in stone that there's no way to overturn it? And we talked about Ahmadinejad, and once again, even last week after the show, I think he came on the record saying something like, Israel once again is soon to be completely eradicated, just wiped off the map type of a thing. That's not a direct quote, but it was basically the same rant that he's been saying for years now against Israel. So it's just a question, in my opinion, that what's the trigger? What event happens that either makes, let's say, a group of nations attack Israel, or Israel start the attack and then everybody joins the fray? And Russia has made it very clear that if Iran is attacked, they will kind of jump in on the side of the Iranians. So it's heating up. It doesn't look good.
And of course, you've already got two aircraft carrier
Argys
groups in the Mediterranean.
That's correct.
So they're not. So as soon as anything does happen, the U.S. is well placed to jump on the side of Israel.
It's almost like World War III, the beginning of World War III, in just kind of looking at what's shaping up. If the Ezekiel prophecy is true, and of course I believe it is, and I do believe it will play out. Unfortunately, Israel will resolve, basically they'll use their nuclear arsenal, whether it's a neutron bomb or whatever. I mean, a bomb like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they will use their nuclear arsenal. And of course, if your listeners would just take the time and read the Ezekiel chapter 39 prophecy, I mean, it's bizarre. This thing's written 2,500 years ago, and it talks about, if I can travel there just for a second, because I think it's really interesting, and it's very specific. It's not like Nostradamus with the fuzzy quatrains, which are just open to all sorts of interpretation. It talks about that this war happens, and the bodies are untouched, and they lay there for a period of about 6 months. No one touches the bodies. They just lay in state like that, okay? No one gets near them. After 6 months, people go out, listen to this part, and they put a marker by the body. They still don't touch it. They just put a marker there. And then professional buriers go out, gather up the dead, and bury them downwind, all in a mass grave at the Dead Sea, 2,500 years ago. Now, it just sounds so bizarre for someone writing that 2,500 years ago. They obviously had no idea of what they were seeing, but it sounds like, and I don't think I'm reading too much into this, I mean, no one's touching anything for 6 months. They're waiting for the radiation levels to go down. Then they still don't touch the bodies. They put markers by the skeletons that they find or whatever. Then professional buriers are hired. I mean, it sounds like there's a nuclear event there that happens, and that's what many people who study this stuff also concur, that it seems like that this is what we're looking at. And of course, we know Carter came out several months ago telling us that the amount of the bombs that were in Israel's nuclear arsenal, I think it's 140 nukes they have or something. Thank you, Jimmy. So it's the cat's out of the bag, and it's just a question of what event really triggers this thing. But, in politics, prophecy, and the supernatural, and we've talked about this before, I believe this is the event that will trigger the supernatural, and that goes into dovetails into the Stevensville sightings or the 3-mile-wide craft seen over the English Channel last year by 2 different pilots, or just the UFO flaps and that are happening weekly somewhere around the planet. I mean, there are sightings all the time. So I think we're going to see some sort of a revealing in the not-too-distant future.
I've asked this to many people who talk about UFOs and the monitoring of this planet by by ETs. If there was to come a point where there was going to be a nuclear exchange, would there be divine intervention? And they all say yes. And yet, if this is true, then the Ezekiel prophecy doesn't stand. However, the Ezekiel prophecy was written thousands of years ago, and it makes sense. So, which way does the ball bounce here, L.A.?
Well, in my opinion, it's not divine intervention. I mean, that's the whole point. I think when the so-called extraterrestrial does the revealing, it will be very similar to what the Indiana Jones movie talks about, and we've discussed that at length on this show. The idea that somehow the extraterrestrials are responsible for all the world's religions, and they genetically manipulated us. And that, of course, in my opinion, is the coming great deception. That people, can you imagine seeing actual live footage? Because they'll have it. I mean, it'll just be like on CNN and the Fox News Channel and everything else. You'll turn this thing on and you'll see the battlefield and things going off. I mean, you'll see all this, just like we saw shock and awe in Baghdad. I mean, people sat in their living rooms munching popcorn, I hate to say it, and watching shock and awe in Baghdad. Mm-hmm. It's craziness. And the world's going to see this, and I think we'll react in total horror. The world collectively will go, we just can't do this. And the world collectively will sign up for anything that talks about peace. And of course, it's a double whammy. We're already on our knees begging for peace, and then all of a sudden this revealing of the so-called extraterrestrial presence shows up and tells us that it's panspermia, we seeded you through the galaxies, we genetically manipulated you, we'll show you who God really is, and people will sign up for that. Which interestingly enough, we've talked a little bit about this. There is an ancient prophecy which talks about before the Antichrist is revealed. And this is, again, it's very specific. It says before the son of perdition, the man of sin, the Antichrist, whichever title you want to give him, before the man of sin, the Antichrist is revealed, there will be a great falling away. Well, what does that mean? I get into that in Politics, Prophecy, and Supernatural. I quote pages by this theologian. His name is Keithley. And he believes that this great falling away is a willful apostasy. But he doesn't have a scenario in which it happens, and I provide the scenario. Something happens which changes people's world's view, instantly. And you remember in Indiana Jones, and I know I'm going to go back to a movie, and you say, well, that's just a movie. Well, is it? When Indiana Jones sees that craft rise up underneath that Mayan temple, his worldview is shattered, and he goes, where did it go? Outer space? And his mentor says, no, Indy, not outer space, it's interdimensional, which speaks of the whole hypothesis of the UFO put forth by Jacques Vallée, that it's not extraterrestrial craft from other planet. It seems to be more like interdimensional. And then he equates it with the demons of old. I mean, that's Vallée's words, not mine, which I find very, very fascinating. So I believe that this is queuing up, if you please, for this coming great deception. And I know it sounds far out, but when you get movies like the Indiana Jones movie, which goes right along with what I propose and what my book talks about, the Luciferian Endgame, it's what is fact and fiction, and what are we really looking at, and what's coming on the planet.
I understand that, but when I look at the Indiana Jones movie, I just see a movie. I see what I see, L.A., is I see a brilliant Hollywood producer and director who's looking at the demographics and what the people are looking for. He's looking at the news, and he's looking at pulp fiction. He's also looking at theology, and he's looking at the paranormal. And what he's done very successfully has given the public exactly what they want to see.
And I would agree with you. He has given a sector of the public what they want to see. But for the most part, I don't think Americans really travel in the whole UFO phenomenon. It's still pretty much fringe. I mean, yeah, the X-Files, people will go see that, and people will turn into your program and others that are similar. But for the most part, people, it's still kind of fringe stuff. And to me, it's very, very deliberate. I mean, he could have gone anywhere with that movie. And, what I find pernicious about it is that if you really look at what he's saying that the Mayan religion was crafted, no pun intended, by the extraterrestrial. That's what he's saying. Because underneath that temple is this huge mothership which comes up. and the god of the Mayan, who is now resurrected when that 13th skull, is put back in place, gets in the craft and off it goes. So it's to me it's very, very deliberate. And then of course it says interdimensional, not extraterrestrial, which again ties into Jacques Vallée. So I mean, does Spielberg have...
Jacques Vallée was also tied into Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
And there you go. And not only that, but Spielberg did that movie, and he also did Taken.
So what are we looking at? We're looking at a director who knows how to make money for the studios based on what the fringe want. And it's like feeding a kid all the chocolate he wants because he's going to want more, and more.
I would agree with you, except for one thing, that anybody in the arts, myself included, you find your niche, you find what your passion is, what you're passionate about, what interests you, what your worldview is always reflected in your art. And Spielberg's worldview is reflected in his art. Now, does that mean that he believes in, let's say, the movies like Taken, the miniseries Taken, or let's say Close Encounters, or this new movie, the Indiana Jones movie? I would say yes. Unless he's completely disingenuous as an artist, his worldview is being promulgated in every movie he does, and he's obsessed with the extraterrestrial UFO.
He is, because he's making a hell of a lot of money. How many Indiana Jones movies have there been?
Well, I think there's 4, right?
There you go. He's had 4 successes based on the same formula. A smart person, a smart businessman, stays with the formula that works. Only a fool would stay with the formula that doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
We've got to be back on the other side of this commercial break. When I come back, X-Zone Nation, I'll be telling you who's on with us tomorrow during our Canada Day show here on the X-Zone. L.A. Marzulli is our special guest, www.spiraloflife.com. L.A. and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, tell me your thoughts. If you have an idea for a guest, send me that email as well to xzone@talkstarradio.com. The X-Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern right here on our home network, our only network, the Talkstar Radio Network. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today www.soulbalancing.world.
Welcome back, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking our guest tonight, Morty Levine. We talked about yoga, meditation, and Eastern religions. Dr. Susan Shumsky, we talked about her new book entitled How to Hear the Voice of God. Dr. Nick Begich joined me. We talked about HARP. We talked about mind control. We talked about RFIDs. We talked about mind experimentation and much more. And he is the author of Angels Don't Play This Harp, Advances in Tesla Technologies, amongst other books. L.A. Marzulli is our guest this hour. We talked about politics, prophecies, and the paranormal. And on tomorrow night's show, our Canada Day show, Paul Grondin will be joining me talking about the great North American Stop the North American Union and the SPP. We'll have an open mic hour called O Canada. Marie D. Jones joins me to talk about 2013 End of Days or a New Beginning. And Brian David Anderson will be talking about his new book, Check Out the Facts and Evidence. That's tomorrow night here on the X Zone. L.A. Marzulli's book is entitled Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, The Coming Great Deception and the Luciferian Endgame. It's available at all major bookstores and, of course, on his website at www.spiraloflife.com. L.A., over the break, I thought about what I was saying about Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
And you know what? Do you know what I realized that in each and every one of his movies, like the Indiana Jones series, and then the Close Encounters, there's no carryover of theme between these two. And if there was, I could understand and maybe agree with what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
The only carryover, or the only connection I can see, and if I'm wrong, please tell me, is the fact that he used quotes and Jacques Vallée in these two. But that was the only tying factor that I could see in the two movies.
Well, he seems to have an overlying worldview, and it's that way. Let's say in E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the miniseries Taken, and this new movie, and that is that the extraterrestrial are somehow, I don't want to use the word overlords, but not only are they superior to us technologically, but they seem to have some sort of a benevolent plan towards us. Remember Close Encounter, what happens at the end? He goes into the ship, and they all greet him, and they surround him. So they're basically benevolent. Even after all the nonsense that's happened, they're basically benevolent. Same thing in Taken. Even though people have implants, they're abducted, they're subjected to horrible experiments and all this other stuff, and there's murder, there's mayhem, there's incest, there's just everything you can possibly imagine in that 20-hour miniseries, and yet the end product somehow justifies the means. So it's a little darker. But what I'm saying is he's promulgating, I believe, a worldview. And
all right, but don't forget, in the War of the Worlds, the disaster ships from Mars were in the ground as well, and they rose up and they caused hell and havoc here on this planet. L.A., we've run out of time for tonight. Speak to you next Monday night, buddy. www.spiraloflife.com. Well, that's it for us over here at the X Zone. To my producer at Master Control, the one and only Batman. Thanks, Batman, for keeping us up on those 4 big satellites in the sky, Galaxy 4R, Telstar 7, Aglia 2, and G3, and, of course, on TalkStarRadio.com, streaming audio. To my wife and senior producer, Laura Rogers, thank you, sweetheart. And to you, the X Zone Nation, thank you for allowing us to be part of your day, your night, no matter where you are on this great big planet of ours. Canada, happy birthday from the X Zone Nation, and each and every one of us tomorrow. Until tomorrow, keep your eyes to the sky.